aren't on Canvas seeing the announcements. So let's think about our outreach. I've heard us a lot talk about outreach as well.
Okay. Is Edith's hand up again?
Oh.
Okay. All right. Before we move on to trustee comments, I'd like to hear from Shonda, and then we'll get going with trustees.
Oops, you muted.
Sorry. Thank you. I just really wanted to say, I know Elaine's talked about this, but in any research that you read, you know that trauma, the impact of trauma doesn't really happen until afterwards. So I understand that a lot of this is not in the LCAP and that, but I honestly don't feel like we can put off the mental health supports. I feel like also in terms of SEL, all the research shows that it's got to be embedded into the curriculum. We've been asking for it to be in the master schedule and not an add-on, because when it's an add-on, students are not coming, they're not opting in. It's one more thing on top of it. It's got to be built into their day somehow, some way. My biggest fear is we go back 5 days a week, business as usual, and we don't address those problems. And I feel like if we do that, we're going to have a huge problem on our hands. There's a mental health crisis coming, and we have to do something to prepare for it. So I really urge us to think outside the box and figure out how to make this happen for our students and staff. Thank you.
Shanice?
Well, my SEL has decreased, but yet my heart is jumping because it was a really good presentation. I really appreciated the students being here, particularly Kai, when she said she gave a vivid picture of what mental health looks like on a typical year and kind of what it looks like now. And that was really powerful for me. I also wanted to just point out, I was looking at the tier one. No one needs to answer this because I know we got to go. But just want to put in there, I'm still trying to figure out what tier one services and tier one supports look like. Because as I look at the flow chart, there was something around the 504 plan and the IEP and the SST, but there's a level before that. And so just wondering kind of what that really looks like for all students. And I think the other thing is to really link how does social and emotional learning link to being ready for college. And I was just trying to search that a little bit more because I know they're doing a lot at the college level because we know that suicide is still high, vacant is high in colleges. There's so many other things that students deal with when they can't manage stress or self-regulate. No need to answer all that now because it is very, very late. But want to say that I really appreciate the SEL task force and all that you all are doing around creating a safe, supportive, and culturally affirming environment so our kids can be ready for life. So just wanted to appreciate that. That's all.
Yes, I also wanted to say something, even though it's so late. First of all, thank you for being here, all of you. Thank you for staying so late. Somebody texted me that it's ironic for a social emotional task force that we're doing this at an ungodly hour, and it's not healthy. So I want to acknowledge that you're all still here, and thank you for your work on the task force. The only comment I want to make, for some reason I know is in and out of the task force. I couldn't always attend the whole sessions. So I heard outside of the task force about the PD recommendation, hatching results. And I'm very intrigued by that because we've never had comprehensive professional development for our mental health staff, for our guidance staff. Our guidance staff is a huge piece of this because they touch every kid. So I guess my question is to Jarrett. You have asked for funding. It's in the LCAP around PD. That is for hatching results. Is that correct? And I am as one board member, I don't know if I have a vote on this. I am all for that type of fabulous professional development that I believe will make a huge cultural difference in our district. To have people really, really well trained. So is that what you're asking for in the LCAP? But it didn't come up at all, which is confusing to me. So that's my question to you.
Yes, it is. I didn't want to provide the name. So I guess, yes, in theory, kind of danced around the company, but yes, it is. That is the company that we contracted with, and a shout out to Bonnie for providing funding for our work that we just went through yesterday with our counseling teams, which include our school counselors, our intervention counselors, our mental health specialists. I'm missing a bunch. I know it's late, but basically we had over 50 staff members across all of our sites that went through just a little bit of scratching the surface on this work yesterday as a team. And outcomes of the day were that 98% of the 50 plus staff that showed up recommended moving forward in this work. There were some very strong words in the evaluation process that this is needed. This is what, we are really wanting, to your point, that a comprehensive counseling team professional development plan across 3 years. We haven't thought about it yet, and we're at the point where, yes, this is being asked and embedded into MTSS and Goal 3, Action 1. And so, yes, that funding is in there for each year over the 3 years of the LCAP. That is a very important ask. And I will point out one last thing on this training and the proposed plan. These are counselors at Hatching Results as an organization, former counselors performing these trainings. And so these are experts that have gone through this work in various school districts and have decided to take their expertise and spread it as consultants through other school districts. So it is an excellent point. Thank you for clarifying that, Carrie. I appreciate, and I'm glad that you've heard about it, because it was pretty awesome. Not to mention that they were the company that we had, I believe, 30 some of our staff in early spring go to their counseling leadership conference for the first time in our district as well. And that's the organization that coordinates that counseling leadership conference as well. So it's definitely connecting the work.
All right. Are there other board comments or questions at this point? Okay, well, thank you again for that in-depth report. And I appreciate the comments that we have had. And I think we've got a handful of action items that we need to try and jam in before everybody finishes passing out here. So thank you all for staying up so late to present so thoroughly to us. Let us go to 14.1, our approval of expanded learning opportunities grant plan.
Oh my goodness, I have another item.
You do.
If you are on the MTSS task force and you are still on this Zoom, I will in no way, shape, or form be offended if you go to bed and try and get some sleep before tomorrow morning. The rest of you are stuck with me. So as Superintendent Leach alluded to in her budget discussion with you, we got funds from a few different sources for addressing the various fallouts of the pandemic. And one of those that we got was the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant funding. And that's what you have before you this evening. So I am I don't think that it will have a lot of questions, because what we did was we took items that were in the LCAP that we could fund under the parameters of the Expanded Learning Opportunities Fund. So first of all, we were super fortunate again that you crystal balled it, and that you had goal 5 in the LCAP, because our goal 5 LCAP question was the same questions we were supposed to get input on for the Expanded Learning Opportunities Fund. So we were able to take that input and take items that we had put into the LCAP that we wanted to fund and put them into the Expanded Learning Opportunities grant plan. And so that's what you have before you tonight. And I hope that was enough information. Alan.
Yeah, in fact, I want to jump in here and depart from my norm on this. The document read very much in a way that really highlighted how the LCAP was well prepared and well aligned with this. And, I don't think there was a matter of crystal balling in picking a goal that was going to be good for getting funding later on. It was a matter of picking a goal that we all recognized was so significant and so essential that it needed to be included among our goals, even as we looked at how we consistently have more goals than our superintendent and our staff can effectively work on at a time. And it just needed to be part of that. And I think it's a little bit more of a measure of the statewide guidance and leadership is beginning to get the picture of alignment of funding and accountability structures, and that this plan is enough in alignment with the LCAP that it made sense for everything to fall out. But to me, reading through that, it was like, yes, indeed, we have been working on the right things. We have been going in the right direction. Our intentions are appropriate. And the state should be very willing, in my estimation, to grant full funding, to get this done. So I think to me, it all seems to be a confirmation that the LCAP that was brought before us earlier this evening is very much on the right track. Are there other board member comments to this?
It looks wonderful to me. Thank you for including the social and emotional supports to pilot stuff in the summer. So it looks wonderful to me.
So you're ready for a motion?
Absolutely.
Be pleased to make that motion.
I'll second.
Third.
I think Shawnee's got the second on not being muted.
Okay. I'm too tired to unmute.
Okay, so this is not a vote. This is an all in favor.
Aye.
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 All right, that is unanimous. The next is the approval of the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant or EPAA.
All right.
I didn't know if you wanted an actual presentation other than you have it in front of you.
An extended one, please.
I have to admit, this has been a very good preview for my LCAP coming next time. So I'm grateful to Bonnie for paving the road.
Say me too.
You'll have to take my word for it that it matches our LCAP.
So I would be happy to make a first statement that I think all the nice things that I just said about the previous item apply here, and also once again the EPAA independently generated document it actually shows the status of being a dependent charter, and that you're able to effectively leverage the district-wide work while reflecting the EPAA specifics and your community, your charter. And so that made a good comparative read and inspired me, at least, with the same level of confidence. So if there are no other board comments, I'd be happy to entertain a motion again.
I move to approve the item.
And also, second.
All right.
Echoing.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Well done. Now we have two items that were pulled from consent. And I want to go about them in reverse order. Quickly, let's get 7.8 out of the way. That's the approval of the Second Amendment to the agreement with the parent venture. And I believe all we need here is an abstention. So all those in favor.
Hold up, Ellen, I'm sorry, abstention, who's?
Wait. Let's entertain the abstention first. Carrie, I believe.
Yes, I'm abstaining because I'm a board member on
Oh, okay, thank
this
you.
nonprofit.
Okay. All right. So do we have a movement for approval of this?
Yes.
A
Second. And I vote
Okay.
yes.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Yes. Those abstaining? Carrie. Any noes? Okay. So one abstention.
Okay.
Just Carrie. All right. Item 7.4, the revised job descriptions for service mechanic lead, and vehicle mechanic. Grace, you pulled that.
I did, and I'm still here. Thank you.
Mhm.
So the background that was given to you is quite misleading. We had one employee begin as a school bus driver, moved on as a mechanic, later becoming the director of transportation. This employee volunteered to drive students when he was a mechanic and volunteered to drive when he was a director. Documentation from this individual does not constitute, quote, years of documentation that mechanics drove for years. Mechanics were not expected to drive student routes because it was never part of their job description. HR confirmed this with a memo. The sitting director now has been on a mission to make mechanics into school bus drivers by forcing mechanics to drive students. Incumbents were not asked about driving routes when hired. Asking a question during an interview is not cause for a change in revising a job description. AFSCME filed a cease and desist order followed by an unfair labor practice charge with HERB. In February, the job descriptions were improperly placed before you because the district had not met with AFSCME. As far as wages, district believes it is just to add additional responsibilities and require additional certification without paying more. However, stipends are board approved for positions at the top superintendent level when asked to do more. When degrees and certifications are required, the board approves to pay more. Job descriptions with FTEs are created for certificated staff and the board approves to pay more. Why would that be different for classified positions? We don't see equity. When there is a shortage of drivers, the district wants to fill the driver shortage with an unclassified classification, mechanics. Having mechanics work out of their classification, there's a proper and different process to have an employee work out of their classification. A job already exists for a school bus driver. A job already exists for a delivery person. A job already exists for a mechanic. The solution is not to force a mechanic to become a school bus driver. Those are two unique and separate classifications. The district sat on this for months and now want to quickly push this through. Is it because we have a new business agent? What has changed? Tonight, we'd like you to hear from the mechanics to understand why this cannot be approved as is tonight. We feel this needs more collaborative work. Now, I know we lost one of our mechanics, and I believe we have one more. So where is he? Let me text him to see if he's still there, because I know they wanted to speak.
Grace, is it Tony?
We have Tony Valho and Ivan Villa.
Tony's here, and who's the other person?
The one below him, on my screen, I see Tony Valho and Ivan Villeda.
Okay.
Hi, my name is actually Kayla Belho. I'm just here so I can let my dad know what happened because he was on the meeting and could not stay awake because he has to go to work tomorrow.
Hi, Kayla. Did you want to speak for your dad?
No, I don't want to speak for my dad. I was under the assumption and he had told me that Ivan was going to speak. So I was just here to kind of update my dad on what goes on, whatever, because at like 10 o'clock, he was like, I can't do this. I need to go to bed. So I'm just here to update him.
Is Ivan ready?
Let me text Ivan, see it's still hanging in there.
His hand looks like it's up, Grace.
Yeah.
He has to mute himself.
Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, here it goes. Good evening. My name is Ivan Villeda, and I'm one of the service mechanics for Sequoia Union High School District. I've been here for the last 13 years. Unfortunately, we're here today because the district wants to add a role of a bus driver to our job description. By doing this, we will be asked to fill in bus drivers daily. My fear is that the impact that this will cause on our daily services of the school buses, fleet vehicles, and school site mechanical equipments within the district. We also service outside district buses. We have brought up our concerns and evidence to human resource about our impact these changes will have in our job. During my interview, I was never asked about the safety of driving students or asked if I was willing to. I checked with the other mechanics since they have been here longer than me, and they confirmed that this was the case for them as well. All of our questions were about automotive and bus related questions. I was told during my interview that I would only need to obtain a Class B license. I want to be known that I do not feel comfortable driving children and being responsible for them. Parents have to feel comfortable in sending off their children with someone that they can trust. And I know I'm not the person because I don't have the experience and the knowledge of driving of the knowledge of a school bus driver. You can provide us with the training, but it will never amount to the actual experience the bus drivers have. I spoke to the fellow mechanics and they don't feel comfortable nor safe driving students around as well. And I need that to be clearly processed. I hope the board not only understands our feelings and concerns, but prioritizes the safety of our students first. Our biggest question is if we don't feel we're qualified to do a bus driver's job, what will the district do to us? Force us, fire us, please advise. We believe that the safety of the children, of our students should be the top priority versus trying to save money down the road. I know the safety of our students play a big role here in our district because I see it firsthand when I go to the schools sites and see the state of the art facilities to help shape the future generations. If the district can make an effort to provide students with the best schools, they should be able to provide with the best service, which would require fully trained bus drivers, not mechanics. Please hire the adequate bus drivers needed and allow us to continue doing the job that we are more than knowledgeable and prepared to do. We invite you to shadow us so you can see firsthand all of our work. pressure and responsibilities we currently have. I hope the board takes the time to consider our concerns because it's not just the impact to us, but it's going to impact our students. If there's any parents, guardians, grandparents who understand the impacts, please voice your concerns in this matter because it ultimately has to do with the safety of your children, which is our #1 priority. Thank you.
All right. All right. So,
Did you want me to respond to any?
yeah, Jackie, you place the item on the agenda.
So a few things, and I provided a detailed background for you in the agenda item. All of the mechanics at one time have been certified to drive routes and have driven routes. It was past practice, and I know that ASME is claiming that was not the case, but it was. And they did not drive routes very often, according to both the current director and the past director. Maybe they drove routes less than 5 or 6 times a year, but at times it was necessary, depending on whether or not we had enough bus drivers to cover the routes. We are always advertising for bus drivers. It is our preference to have trained drivers drive those routes. There are times when we have drivers out on workers' comp, we are looking for drivers. And so from time to time, we did have mechanics drive those particular routes. We have met and conferred with ASME multiple times regarding the job description. We have moved into negotiating the impact of the addition of driving routes to the job description, which would include things like training, timelines, the impact it would have on their hours. As Ivan brought up, obviously, if they drive a route, they're not able to repair buses during that time period. All of those things are negotiable. We presented ASME with a proposal, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and met with them subsequent to that, and they did not provide us with a counter proposal. So we are waiting for ASME's counter proposal on the impact on the working conditions, which again could include the training, the timeline, additional stipends for driving the routes. All of those things are negotiable, and we are more than willing to meet and negotiate those things with ASME.
Okay, well, I know that there are no sudden changes and movements in what the district's position has been on this. I know that this has been brought to the board numerous times over several years, and it was presented to the board throughout the entire period of time that every single one of our bus drivers was required to have the license for driving students as part of the terms of employment. And as you reported, that our mechanics, when the need has been there in the past, have driven students on routes. And that this is simply a formalization statement of the job description under which they were hired. And I am quite comfortable with approving this to make sure that that we have this emergency service available when necessary. There are other board comments?
So is it the case if we don't approve it, the emergency service is not available? Because it sounded like it had been available. I'm not familiar with this issue.
So Jackie, can you respond to that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I couldn't hear you.
Alan had said that it's important to do this so that we have the emergency service available. But from what you had said, it sounded like the emergency service had already been available with the job descriptions as they are. And I'm just not familiar with the issue and was trying to understand.
So the mechanics did drive the routes in the past when necessary, and it was very infrequent. And then my understanding is that the certification was not renewed. And at that time, we discovered that it wasn't in the job description. We have documentation that it was a question in the interviews, that they were asked if they were certified to drive routes and would drive routes. And they answered that there's a panel interview. So we've documented that as well. So when we discovered that it wasn't embedded in the job description back in 2018, we moved to embed it in the job description. And that's when this discussion happened. And so we revised the job description to include the requirement. Since then, we have not required them to drive the routes because we wanted approval in the job description to make sure that it aligned with practice. Does that answer your question, Trustee Ginn?
I think so. Well, it's coming. I'm in a tricky spot in that I didn't read up on this and prepare in advance of the meeting, because usually the consent calendar gets consented, and I had no idea this was a contentious item. So I'm not sure the best way. I mean, it sounds like you have a lot of history and background on it. I don't know about it. I don't know if others have history and background on this.
Okay. Shanice, you had a question?
Yeah, I think in past information that we've had about the job descriptions, is my understanding is that this is typical practice and that they are not bus drivers, like that's their main job description, that it's backup. So I'm struggling with the idea of safety if you're being trained to drive.
Correct. Mechanics have to have the certification to move the buses, right? That's one certification. And then there's an additional certification to drive students. So they already would have a certification to be able to actually drive the bus. But when you put students on the bus, that's an additional certification that they would need to be able to drive students. And all of them have had that certification in the past, but those certifications have lapsed. And so it would involve them getting recertified. There's written tests, there's a driving test, and then they have to be certified by the California Highway Patrol to drive routes.
Yeah, I understand that, but my understanding, and maybe I'm just a little tired, I thought that this role was like, can you guys hear me? Okay. I thought it was like, they weren't like bus drivers first, mechanics second. They're actually mechanics who are backup.
Correct.
For driving the bus. So it's not like the flip, right? So it's not like doing two jobs at one time. It's only if we need them.
That's correct. And as I said, it's maybe 5 or 6 times a year at the most that they would be called on to drive a route. And they are mechanics first. Mechanics are paid at a higher rate. And so when we have a mechanic drive a bus, we're actually paying more than we would normally pay for a bus driver. So, it's definitely in the district's best interest to have a full complement of bus drivers, which we usually do. But there are times when we also service, and you may not know this, we drive routes for the elementary districts as well. And for a number of the elementary districts, for example, Belmont, Redwood Shores. And then we also provide field trips. So there's times when there's more field trips. And of course, there hasn't been very many field trips in the last year, but there's times when there's more field trips. And so it's very infrequent, but mechanics have been asked to drive the route. What is negotiable is, what does that look like for them? What does it mean about them completing their work as a mechanic? Is there a stipend attached to when they drive the bus and they're working out of classification? All of the training, who's going to do the training, what is the cost of the training? All of those things are what are negotiable.
Okay. So then my last question is, so they drive the bus for elementary school if they need them, for field trips. And most of our other kids, and I think Crystal has shared this with me, and I know with my kids, they take the public bus. So who else, what other situations would a person ride the bus? Would we drive the bus? Would it be children with special needs? What would it be?
We have, and I don't know, Crystal may know more. I think we have 40, how many bus drivers do we have? I think it's 40 something bus drivers. And I want to say it may be as many as, like, there are times when we have 60 routes that are being driven.
Okay.
And there's a whole protocol for bus drivers to bid on routes that's done by seniority. And then if a mechanic is asked to drive a route, they're usually given the choice of the route that they will drive, because it means there's a shortage. We also have what are called cover drivers. So for example, if we have 60 routes, we may have 65 drivers, because then there's and I don't know the numbers exactly right, because then we would have cover drivers. So if a driver was out sick, we could have a driver on workers' comp. There could be a number of reasons that a regular driver was not available. And then we have what are called cover drivers that cover that. And then we have the director and the supervisor and some dispatch that can cover routes. And then we would ask the mechanics to drive.
So that is the process. So they would be last resort to drive the bus. And this would be because we need to ensure that our kids get the access to the resources and education that they need. So that not only would they be accessed last, they would be given opportunity of which children or which routes to drive that they feel comfortable with. So this is a backup to the backup to the backup.
You could look at it like you could look at it like that. Yes.
Okay, so I'm done with my questions. Thanks.
Okay, Chris?
Shanice, I thought you put that very well at the end. Three of us on the board have heard this case for the past 2 years on occasion. I guess I am convinced over that period of time that the district does have a compelling need for this service by the mechanics, that it's not, well, I understand some of the concerns expressed by Ivan. I think it's the right thing for us to approve this. In the way that you described it, Shanice, actually, this is, I don't know whether it's a backup to the backup to the backup, but it's certainly not, it's an occasional need for us that would be hard to fulfill otherwise.
Are there other questions or comments from board members? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do have a concern with people driving kids if they really don't want to drive kids. I'm not comfortable with that. Maybe it's because it's late, but
I definitely understand that. And that's one of the reasons why we have training. If we need to provide whatever kind of support we need to provide so they are comfortable driving around. And we will provide that support, training, coaching.
But they're telling us they're not comfortable. So, I mean, I'll probably be outvoted, but I don't think I'm comfortable with this.
Well, they may be uncomfortable because they've lost their certification and they haven't been retrained to run the routes. So, because they've driven them in the past. So.
And Jackie, you're saying it's training and certification, and presumably the certification is evidence of safety.
Yes.
Is that not correct?
Yes.
So I'd like to offer more clarification on this as well.
Grace, it's hard to hear you.
There's only 31 routes. I'm sorry, can you guys hear me?
Barely.
Can you guys hear me? I'm sorry. Barely?
Barely,
Can you
yeah.
hear me now?
Barely.
I'd like to offer some clarity on this. So number one, there's 31 routes and 29 drivers. There hasn't been, they haven't been on top of keeping a full staff of drivers. There's no such thing as a cover driver. We proposed that the district create the job description and hire a cover driver, and that has not happened. We proposed to backfill vacant positions with creating a new job description, mechanic / driver, so that the applicant knows what kind of job they're getting themselves into. So we were advising against changing in mid-career a mechanic who's been there for an X number of years, who applied for a job that was only a mechanic. And so I understand that you guys are seeing this as them being a backup to the backup to the backup, but that's not exactly how it works out. There's a bus driver shortage. The dispatchers have to drive, the supervisor has to drive, the director has to drive, and they don't do that. There's an absence, and they're calling the mechanics at 5 o'clock in the morning when their start time is at 8 or 9. So again, these mechanics are not on-call workers. Another thing that I heard was that they have asked if they can have, if they're not opposed to driving in an emergency, but that's not when they're used. So in the past, the emergency has been when there was a school breakdown, a school bus breakdown. And so yes, the mechanic does need to go out there to assess and understand the broken down vehicle and deliver a running school bus. So that is emergency situations, but there has been an uptick in field trips that are being taken in to support outside organizations, field trips that are not internal. Let's see what else was talked about. I'm trying to make sure that I cover all the points that you guys brought up. And I understand that there has been an ongoing discussion, but it doesn't sound like you guys are really listening to what AFSCME is saying, and you guys are leaning towards more what the district is saying, even though there's an error in what they say. So I'm not too thrilled about that. I would like for you guys to really listen to what the mechanic had to say. Ivan had expressed the type of students that he has been under intense stress when transporting young mothers that are pregnant, young mothers with babies on laps, and these backup to the backup, they don't normally drive in situations like that. So it's very nerve-wracking when you're trying to drive a 40-foot bus and trying to keep passenger safety on your mind. It's not something that's easy. I was a school bus driver before, and you really have to know what you're doing. You just can't be on there once or twice a year and think that you're going to be fluent. The training really doesn't come, and the fluidity doesn't really come unless you've been driving regularly. So that's not true either. We propose that if the district moves forward and wants to revise the job description, we're asking for a 2-step wage increase. The audit and the comparison that the district has done has been to San Mateo and Palo Alto, and San Mateo came in higher in their wages. So again, just want to make sure that you guys have all the right and correct information.
Many of the items that Ms. Horton has mentioned are negotiable regarding the job description, and we're more than willing to negotiate those items.
Okay.
Dr. McAvoy, I wasn't sure from what you just said if you meant that negotiations are continuing and that you would end up with a negotiated agreement, or if you're saying if it's approved as written, then you continue negotiating. I didn't understand.
No, the job descriptions are not negotiable. The way the process works is that when the district is going to make a change in a job description, we meet and confer with whether it's SDTA or whether it's ASME, we meet and confer. And there are times when we meet and confer and we do tweak job descriptions, we change language, and we come to an agreement. And sometimes we don't come to an agreement. The next process is once the board has approved the job description, then we would negotiate the impact of that job description. And that's where you would look at the cost, for example, if there's a salary change, if there's training that needs to be done, if there's a timeline, for example, if there's a new certification, is it going to be that the incumbents are certified within 6 months, or who's paying for the training? And for example, they could negotiate whether or not mechanics, we're not talking about them being on call and calling them in when they would not normally work. So all of those types of things are negotiable. Job descriptions are not negotiable. The requirement is to meet and confer regarding job descriptions.
I just have one more question. So if we approve the job description and as the workers say, we still don't feel comfortable, they really have strong reservations around it, what happens? I don't know, if you can say that right now, but I just wondered if they completely disagree, what happens?
Shanice, I couldn't understand that. Can you repeat it?
Yes. So if ASME, you go through the negotiation piece of the impact of the job description, if we were to approve today, if the workers say, I absolutely cannot do that, what happens?
Well, it depends on what we negotiate. There are times when we would negotiate with, especially with certifications, where they allowed multiple opportunities to become certified. But if they can't meet the essential duties of their job, there's a couple of things that could happen. Yes, they could actually lose their job, or which could be another issue is when you, what we call Y-rate someone because they're not up to the level of the job description, so their pay is frozen. So there's a number of things that could happen. And again, all of those things are negotiable. And we have not gotten a response from ASME regarding our proposal, and we have not seen a counter proposal from ASME regarding any of those issues, which we would discuss in negotiations.
Thank you.
This is great. We did take a position, and like I said, back in October, November, we came at a point where we were very collaborative, and the district sat on it and did not make any movement until here recently, March, April. And we have completely regressed from where we were at. So that is why it is concerning. And we just want to, again, work collaboratively with the district. And that's why I was saying that we may need a little more time on this. We're not understanding. There was a halt, and then now they want to move swiftly. So we're not understanding that action.
During the pandemic, the need for bus drivers was reduced significantly. and we had other issues that were a priority. As we move to return students to campus, and we're moving towards increasing the number of our routes, this moved up as a priority. So this has always been a priority, and we've all discussed it over the last, I think it was started in 2018. So it has always been the intent to bring this job description. We have brought it. This is the 4th time we have brought it to the board.
I wonder at this point, this is going back and forth, and I was just asking questions for clarification, but not for us to have a huge union discussion about this. But I think we need to get back to, and maybe I'm just exhausted, but just get back to what we were gonna do, whether to vote on this or whatever. I just felt like there was a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, so I've been aware of the history of this job description and this job condition throughout the 3 years that this has been going on. I'm consistently been comfortable that this is the correct job description to move forward with, and that whatever impact negotiations are appropriate to get it get the working conditions aligned properly should follow.
I concur with that and would like to make the motion to approve the new job description.
We have a second.
I wanted a second, but I don't know if I could put a caution on there. There's something that was said that didn't sit well with me, was people could lose their jobs, and that doesn't sit well with me. But I do believe we need to look at the job description and let it go through the process, but I don't want people losing their jobs. So I don't know how to put forth what is it called? Motion.
Shanice, I wonder if I might ask a question of Jackie that could address your concern, and that's to what extent could the board be involved in the subsequent negotiations, the conditions essentially after the job description is approved, or if the job description was approved?
Obviously, the board provides direction in any negotiations. And so we definitely, I've shared the proposal with you in the Friday update that we presented to ASME. That proposal was shared with you. Once we have a counter proposal from ASME, I would circle back with the board. For example, if we get a counter proposal on the 9th, I would be sharing that during closed session and getting direction from the board on how you wanted to handle those things.
So in effect, there is subsequent engagement by the board in those negotiated conditions.
That would be my primary concern, because
That's correct.
I would
That's
not
correct.
want to lose good employees.
Yep.
Through this process.
So are you interested in seconding?
I am. I think that ultimately our kids are going to need this, but I am concerned about the way that they're feeling, and that there is an honest negotiation process so that we can really hear the employees and that we hear their proposal back. So yes.
All right.
Can I add that I share those concerns, and I presume that Jackie is hearing that from the board right now.
Okay, so we do have a motion and a second. And so I'll call all those in favor.
Aye.
I'll vote yes.
All those opposed? Okay, carry. All right, so by 4-1, the motion is approved. All right. That brings us to what there is about future agenda items that is worth keeping us going at 1:45 in the morning. Wait.
I have very quickly
Okay.
two things.
Rich.
Very quick update. Carrie and I are on the Redwood City Together group. Carrie and I are on the Redwood City Together group. It's a collaborative. There is currently not a Sequoia Union High School District initiative within that group, but there's opportunity to have one. So just to be aware, maybe we'll be bringing that as an item in the future, not necessarily right away. But wanted to report out on that. And then on June 15, I believe the state is changing its rules. We have a meeting on June 9 and another meeting on June 23. So I think new rules will apply for our June 23 meeting. So I propose that on our June 9 meeting, we have an agenda item about how we're going to run our meetings and a couple specific things I'd like to include. I believe that is a timer, and I think we could use it, and we could try to stay on time with our agendas and have an idea of how long a presentation is supposed to be and actually refer to the timer and try to stay on task so we're not here this late again. I would maybe time each presentation, each speaker, just time everything and get some data so we can see how this happened and how to not happen again. And then, so one would be time management and use of the timer for the agenda. And the second would be what we're going to do about Zoom and public comment. I think we had a public comment today that was not okay. Maybe people have First Amendment rights. They can say what they want to say, but I don't know that we are obligated to air it on Zoom and record it and put it on YouTube. So maybe we could have norms, and I don't know the rules around this, but if we could have norms and someone's with a quick mute button and people who are talking about any individual person, for example, get muted. If it's about a policy, it doesn't, but I don't know, something where there's some level of control if we're giving you the option to zoom in a comment. Of course, if someone chooses to come here, we wouldn't have to put it on Zoom and they could, I don't think we have the legal right to stop them from making comments. So broadly, how to run our meetings after June 15 and the timer. And I'd like to have those things as a board discussion on June 9.
I agree with that.
That might be informed by county council on this censoring question.
All right, so I think there's at least one or more other board members that are interested in that as a
We just discussed it.
discussion. Yeah. Okay. I do have a couple of things. The first is that we were approached by members of the community college board at the last SMC-SBA meeting who were interested in work around articulation. I know there was a meeting with Bonnie Hansen that took place. And one of the recommendations the community college folks brought to us was the idea of setting up 2x2 meetings rather than full joint board meetings to try to move support the work of articulation. And so I thought that that would be a good discussion item to have that could include also some feedback from Bonnie on how those conversations were going and what that would look like. So I would propose as an agenda item a discussion about 2x2s with the community college district. Is there interest in that?
Yeah.
I know.
There's no staff time for that.
Okay, I'm seeing multiple nods. So we'll try and have that as well. And then my other comment to try and be quick. We have reached the start of graduation and commemoration season. I was able to attend the middle college senior celebration. It oddly was not called the graduation ceremony, but it was tremendously exciting to see what felt like somewhat of a normal gathering. We had, it was outdoors. We had parents there with masks and socially distanced, but it was a celebration, and the enthusiasm of our students and the excitement over it, and just the positive vibe of a graduation experience was tremendous. And I'm very much looking forward to the coming week and the additional opportunities we will have. And excited to be at that time of the year. Shanice.
Just a report out of some of the things that I've been doing is that I went, Carrie and I went to the Black Student Union's Black graduation, had a really good time. It was outside. They gave out over $22,000 worth of scholarships. And I also went to EPA's Scholars Night, and they gave out, they don't have the exact numbers, but they think over $350,000 worth of scholarships. So our kids are going to college. I'm really excited about that and really acknowledging our kids. And I usually don't put numbers out there, but I think it's important to know that that our community is investing in our students. And then the last piece is that the San Mateo County Immigration Office is starting to do their strategic plan, and one of their subgroups is around education. So I'll keep you guys abreast of that.
Just something for me real quickly. You know, we've had several requests for the Equity and Diversity Committee to present at a board meeting. Is that happening? Is that on the docket?
It is on our list.
Potentially, if they're available, I spoke with them today that there's some additional work that they have to do.
Okay.
I'm working with the EDC on when they're available to present. Considering end of year, they may not be able to present until August, but I am scheduling that with them.
Okay.
Okay, with that, if we're good, I'll entertain a motion for.
Yes, I can. Yes.
All right. All right. Thank you all brave people for hanging out so long.
We had no choice. Oh, you're talking to them, not us.